I never thought a simple birthday gift could change my life, or more importantly, change the way my mother looked at me. But looking back now, I realize it wasn't about the gift at all, it was about the years of disappointment, favoritism, and unspoken resentment that had built up in our family. My name is Clara Mitchell, and I grew up in a household where appearances were everything. My mother, Victoria, was the kind of woman who measured success by the shine on your shoes, the brand on your purse, and the size of the diamonds on your fingers. She had a reputation to uphold in our suburban community, and she never let us forget it. My father, Harold, was quiet, hardworking, and often absent. He ran a small construction business, and while he provided well enough, he never lived up to the grand vision my mother had for her life. She wanted wealth, luxury, and status symbols. And when she didn't get them from him, she turned her eyes and her pressure onto us, her children. I was the middle child. My older sister, Angela, was the golden one, beautiful, confident, always wearing the latest fashion. She seemed to breathe effortlessly in the world my mother idolized. My younger brother, Ethan, was the baby of the family, coddled and spoiled, his mistakes always excused with a laugh. And then there was me, plain Clara, the bookish one. The one who never seemed to shine in the way my mother wanted. From as far back as I can remember, I was treated as the afterthought. If Angela got a designer dress for prom, I got a secondhand one that looked almost as good. If Ethan wanted a new gaming console, he got it even. If my request for art supplies was brushed aside as a waste of money. It wasn't that my mother didn't care about me. No, she cared, but only in the sense that she cared how I reflected on her image. And since I was quiet, simple, and unimpressive in her eyes, I became her constant project. The child she wanted to fix. Clara, for heaven's sake, stand up straight, she would scold at family dinners. Clara, don't. Where that tit makes you look frumpy. Clara, why can't you be more like your sister? Each word was a small cut, but over the years they carved deep scars in me. Still, I loved my family, or at least I tried to. I wanted my mother's approval so badly that I bent myself into knots trying to please her. I studied hard, got decent grades, helped around the house, and even took on part-time jobs to pay for things myself so I wouldn't be a burden. But nothing ever seemed enough. The real turning point, though, began around my mother's 50th birthday. Victoria had been planning it for months, a grand party at our house, with over 50 guests, catered food, decorations fit for a queen, and of course, an elaborate cake. She wanted it to be the kind of event that would have her friends talking for weeks, and she made sure we all knew our roles. Angela was tasked with organizing the invitations and managing the decorations. Ethan was in charge of handling the DJ and entertainment. And me, well, I was told to just make sure you don't embarrass me. That was my role, to not ruin the evening. But I wanted more than that, wanted to give her something meaningful, something that would finally make her look at mean, with annoyance or pity, but with pride. The problem was, I didn't have money. I was still in college, working part-time at a small bookstore, barely making enough to cover my textbooks and bills. There was no way I could compete with the gifts Angela and Ethan were planning. Angela had already boasted about buying our mother an expensive silk scarf from Paris. Ethan, despite barely having a job, had convinced Dad to fund his gift, a sleek, new smartwatch. And me, I had maybe $30 saved. I spent nights agonizing over it. Should I just buy something cheap and generic? Perfume bottle? A piece of costume jewelry? But I knew if I did that, my mother would roll her eyes and everyone else would notice the difference. Then, one day at work, as I was shelving books, I stumbled across an old leather-bound journal tucked away in the clearance section. It wasn't new. In fact, it looked vintage with slightly yellowed pages and a worn cover. But when I picked it up, I felt something. It was beautiful in its simplicity, classic, timeless, with a little golden clasp to keep it shut. I flipped through the pages, and for some reason, I imagined my mother writing in it. Not her usual shopping lists or social calendars, but her real thoughts, her dreams, her memories. It struck me then, what if I gave her something personal instead of flashy, something that came from my heart? So I bought the journal. And that night, I sat down and began filling the first few pages with handwritten notes. Not just happy birthday, but stories. Memories I had of her. Times when she had made me laugh as a child. Little moments that, despite everything, I cherished. I poured my soul into those pages. I wrote about the time she held my hand when I was afraid of the dark, the time she sang while cooking Sunday dinner, the time she surprised me at a school play even though she'd been busy. I wanted her to know that beneath all the criticism, I saw her. I loved her. By the time I finished, I had filled 10 pages. The rest I left blank, hoping she would continue writing, capturing her life in her own words. It wasn't expensive. It wasn't flashy, but it was real. I wrapped it carefully in plain brown paper, tied with a simple ribbon. And as I placed it on the gift table the night of the party, I whispered to myself, maybe this will be enough. Maybe she finally see me? I had no idea then just how wrong I was. I woke that Saturday to the sweet and sour smell of fondant and perfume drifting up the stairwell. The house sounded like a rehearsal for a thunderstorm, heels tapping, cupboard doors slamming, the vacuum whining. Angela's voice ricocheting from room to room like a marble in a glass bowl. "Clara," she called from downstairs. "Can you please not wear anything dreary tonight? It's Mom's 50th, not awake." I held the journal in my hands for a moment like a living thing, then slid it into my desk drawer and closed it with a click. "Not awake," I repeated in the mirror, tugging at a loose thread on the cardigan I'd planned to wear. I'd ironed the one navy dress I owned that didn't cling in all the wrong places. It wasn't couture, but it was neat, presentable. If I stood in the hallway light, just so. The skirt even looked a little silk-like. Downstairs, the kitchen was a command center. Victoria was in a satin robe, hair in rollers as big as juice, cans directing to catering assistants with the authority of a general. The hydrangeas go in the white ceramic vases, not the glass. "The glass looks cheap," she said, waving a manicured finger. Then, to me, "Clara, sweetheart, can you do me a favor and make sure the gift table isn't cluttered with things?" She gestured vaguely, as if things equaled crumbs and dust and me. "Sure," I said, and tried to smile. "Everything looks beautiful, Mom." She didn't hear me. She was already turning to scold Ethan, who had wandered in shirtless with a bag of chips. "Absolutely not. You're not eating fluorescent food in my kitchen today? Put that away, and please tell the DJ that the first hour is soft jazz. Nothing. With lyrics about grinding." Ethan grinned, unrepentant. "Got it, Mom? No grinding." Angela breezed in like a El Ariel ad, her dress the color of expensive champagne and her smile even more polished. "The rental chairs are here," she trilled. "They're the gold Chiaveris with ivory cushions, don't worry. They're the right shade of ivory. Not that awful yellow you said made you look sallow." I triple-checked. Victoria clasped Angela's forearms with both hands, eyes shining. "You're a treasure." There was a pause, brief but heavy. I felt it the way animals feel a coming tremor. Victoria's gaze moved to me, then away, as if by accident she'd let her eyes touch a bare light bulb. "Clara, why don't you put the place cards out? Keep the handwriting small. Small looks elegant." "I printed them," Angela sang softly. "Foil pressed, it's all set. Right," Victoria said, recovering. Then, "Clara, just help Dad polish the glasses. Polish the glasses." I kissed the side of my teeth with my tongue so I wouldn't say something I'd regret. "Okay?" Dad was in the dining room, elbows working a slow circular rhythm over the stemware. He looked like a shipbuilder sanding an old rib, his face as patient as an oak. "Hey there, kiddo," he said. "Everything okay?" "Of course." I held a crystal goblet to the window. Light braided itself through the facets. "It's a big day." His smile was a little lopsided, that it is. He lowered his voice. You ready for whatever this is going to be? I pretended not to know what he meant. It'll be fine, I said. People will sing happy birthday, eat too much cake, and make polite jokes about reading glasses and grandkids. He glanced toward the kitchen, where Victoria's dislike of imperfection pulsed like a heartbeat. After a beat, he added, for what it's worth, I know you'll make your mom proud. It landed on me like a dropped coin small. Unexpected ringing. I tucked it away inside me, where the journal's 10 pages glowed like banked coals. By late afternoon, our house had transformed. The backyard, lit with strings of Edison bulbs, looked like a magazine spread. Round tables wore tablecloths that spilled to the ground like soft waves, each set with gold-rimmed plates and folded napkins. That resembled camellias, a flower, while Angela's showpiece rose behind the head table. The initials VM picked out in white roses among pinks and creams. When the rental company finished with the portable dance floor, it looked almost like a stage. The gift table stood near the entrance, draped in ivory, flanked by 2 tall vases of eucalyptus and blush peonies. Gifts began to arrive early, wrapped in glossy paper with bows so crisp you could cut yourself on them. A small shopping bag with a logo pattern that looped like a song. A hat box from a boutique in the city. A long, slender case that obviously held jewelry. The scent of money was everywhere, as innocent and as menacing as a freshly sharpened knife. I waited until the entryway settled into the murmur of guests removing coats and exchanging air kisses, then slipped upstairs for the journal. I'd tied it with a length of soft gray ribbon I found at the bookstore, subtle, dignified. The brown paper I'd chosen felt right, honest, unpretentious. My hands shook, but that was just adrenaline, I told myself, the good kind. At the gift table, I tucked my little parcel in a neat corner, angling it so the ribbon caught a little. Light. It didn't need to shout. It only needed to be found. Clara. Angela appeared at my elbow like a conjured helper on a cooking show. Oh, there you are. She surveyed the table, counting bows, visually weighing each box. That yours? Her tone curious, not yet cruel. Yes, I said, and for a second I thought I heard in my own voice both apology and pride. It's cute, she said, with that airy sweetness that floats on top of judgment. You know Mom is going to open gifts in front of everyone, right? I know, I said. I imagined Mom peeling back the paper, finding the journal, slowing reading and then looking up at me. I imagined a softened mouth, a nod that said, I see you. Okay, Angela said, patting my arm. Just checking. Guests swelled like a rising tide. Dad shook hands, Ethan fist bumped. Victoria floated in a silver gown that clung in all the right places and reflected light like individual threads of moon. She laughed, she sparkled, she accepted compliments as if they were roses thrown on stage. People told her she looked 35, and she said, oh, you. But the way she tilted her chin said, go on. When it was time for toasts, the crowd gathered on the lawn, the sky going from apricot to violet. Angela tapped her champagne flute with a practiced touch. To the woman who taught me everything about taste, grace, and how to get a wine stain out of silk. She began, and the laughter in response was warm, easy. Mom, you are my icon. 50 looks insane on you. Insanely good. Someone chorused, and the toasts rolled on like a pleasant small storm. Margaret from the club recounting a charity gala where Victoria saved the day. Dad telling a story about the time their car broke down on the freeway and Victoria charmed a tow truck driver in 20 minutes. People laughed until their shoulders touched. I laughed too, because Dad's delivery had a harmless, bumbling sweetness to it. But inside, I counted the beats of my heart the way you count between lightning and thunder. Then came the DJs. Announcement, gift opening time. Let's gather by the entrance. The crowd's attention shifted, human GPS recalibrating. The portable mic squeaked, and the table with its little mountain of luxuries became a stage where everyone wanted a front row seat. I hung back near the camellia napkins, pressing my palms together so they wouldn't tremble. Angela positioned herself at Mom's right, Ethan at her left. Dad stood slightly behind like a bodyguard who secretly hated confrontation. I slipped into the second row where I could see the ribbon on my own small parcel peeking out like a shy child. Shall we begin? Victoria beamed. Oh, this is too much. You're all too generous. Angela handed her a long electric blue box with a logo embossed in gold. Start with mine, she half whispered, half announced. Victoria chuckled in mock protest, and then the paper unfurled like a ribbon of water and the lid lifted, and the room inhaled. A scarf, hand-painted with peonies that seemed to move, spilled into the light. From Paris, Angela said, practically purring. Limited edition. Victoria pressed the silk against her throat. Oh, darling, she breathed. It's exquisite. She held it up for the crowd, and the crowd applauded. It was ridiculous applauding a scarf, but they did. And it felt like we were all playing a part in a play we hadn't rehearsed, but somehow knew by heart. Next came the slender jewelry case. Inside, a bracelet winked with a row of diamonds so bright they looked like frozen stars. The card said from the Hernanzes, but I saw Angela's eyes flick to the bracelet and back, with a hunger that made me love her a little less and pity her a little more. Ethan's gift was a smartwatch, black and sleek in its minimalist box. To help you track all the steps you take bossing us around, he joked, and the laughter was loud because it was safe. Victoria kissed his cheek, leaving a coral print. That made him blush. Someone gave a hand-blown crystal decanter shaped like a teardrop. Someone else a spa weekend. There were gift cards that would have paid my rent twice over. A handbag appeared, pale and structured, the kind of purse you see carried by someone who has a driver. The pile of open boxes was beginning to look like a jewelry store's backroom. And then Angela reached for a small parcel tucked of course near the back. Brown paper. Gray ribbon. My mouth went dry. There it was placed in Victoria's hands. I could see the way the paper looked suddenly dowdy in this glossy setting. It was ordinary in a cathedral of extraordinary. I heard a whisper behind me, someone saying, "Did someone forget to wrap theirs?" And a small laugh, a bubble popping. Victoria smiled on autopilot and tugged the ribbon. The gray untied itself politely and drifted away. The paper tore softly, not the clean ripping sound the other boxes made, just a sigh. And then the journal lay in her hands, leather, modest, and warm under the lights, the little gold clasp catching a star of glow like it was trying to speak up. For a half second, the strange quiet that happens when an airplane goes through a cloud pocket settled around us. She looked at it, then at the inner cover where I had written, in my careful bookstore script, to Mom, for the words you don't say out loud. Love, Clara. She flipped open to page 1, where my handwriting began. I remember the night you taught me the names of birds. Is this? Victoria let out a light, surprised laugh. A journal. It's beautiful, Dad said quickly, placing a hand on her shoulder. Leather. Look. Yes, leather, Victoria echoed, fingers brushing the cover like she'd found a manual to a device from a decade ago. She turned another page, scanned, then another. Something in her face tightened. She lifted her chin. How thoughtful. The way she said thoughtful was like the way you pat a child's head when they bring you a lopsided clay ashtray from art class in a world that no longer smokes. It landed in me like a tack, sharp, small, cumulative. Angela leaned toward the open pages. Oh, are those notes? Her smile curled. How sweet. Ethan peered theatrically over Angela's shoulder. A memory book. That's, I felt my face warm. I wanted to step forward and take the microphone and say, it's more than a journal. It's 10 pages of love. It's the map of our family through my eyes. But the script of the evening did not have a line for me right then. Victoria closed it gently, as if she didn't want to bruise it, and set it on the table beside the box of spa vouchers. "Thank you, Clara," she said, turning to the crowd with a smile that was all teeth. "She's my writer. You know, someone in the front, Margaret, I think asked, 'Did you make it yourself?' And then laughed like that was inherently adorable, like I had woven the leather in my attic with a spindle." "I bought it," I said, forcing the words up through a tight throat. "And I wrote some memories to start, so you could—" "Oh," Victoria lifted it again and fluttered the pages like a deck of cards. "You wrote in it already. How earnest, lovely." Lovely, the mic picked up the faintest tilt of amusement. Heads angled, a few eyebrows went up in barely perceptible arcs. Earnest, lovely. In the third row, someone whispered, "How quaint," and a little wave of tittering passed through. Not cruel, not overt, just the sound people make when they believe they're in on the same joke. "Let's see what Clara wrote," Angela said, too brightly, and I saw too late. Too late what she thought she was doing, turning this into a heartwarming interlude where our aloof mother might cry a tasteful tear and hug her middle child under the lights. Victoria hesitated. I saw at a flicker of uncertainty, of impatience, of calculation. Then she clicked the clasp open again and read aloud. "I remember the night you taught me the names of birds, sparrow, finch, robin while we waited for the power to come back. And you made shadow puppets on the wall." Her voice gave the words a shape they did not deserve, more brittle than they sounded in my head. The crowd listened politely. Someone said, "Ah." Victoria smiled, but it was the kind of smile you paste on when a child recites a poem for too long. I watched her eyes skitter down to the next paragraph. "I remember how you squeezed my hand so hard at the emergency room that I forgot to be afraid." She did not read that part. She flipped forward, and I knew, because I knew this woman, that she was looking for a shorter piece, something tidy, presentable. "I remember your singing while you made Sunday gravio. Goodness, we used to call it gravy, not sauce." She laughed, and a few guests laughed too, grateful for the signal that they were allowed to be relieved. "Well," she said brightly, shutting the journal and laying it down again, "I'll have to read the rest later, in private." She paused too long. "When I have time." The word time slid into the crowd and burst like perfume, sweet and stinging. I saw the way people shifted, the way their eyes traveled from my mother's glossy hair to my small brown gift, like beads on a rosary. I heard one of Victoria's friends murmur, "Oh, Clara, the way people do when they see a bad haircut on a nice face." A heat rose in my throat that felt like shame and fury had decided to marry and have a child inside me. I wanted to cry, wanted to be above crying, wanted desperately for someone to say what my father had almost said earlier, that this was good, that it was better than good, that it mattered. Instead, Ethan nudged the smartwatch box forward, and Victoria laughed. A real laugh this time, melodious, easy. "Look," she said, tapping the screen. "It tells me my heartbeat." "What a marvel." "Open mine next," Margaret chimed. "It's not as sentimental as Clara's." She smiled to show she was teasing. "Not teasing, but I promise you'll use it. Not as sentimental." The words hung in the air with a soft pink barb. They moved on. The gifts resumed there. Gleaming parade, a cashmere wrap, a bottle of something sourced from the top of a mountain. Around me, conversation started again, the murmur rising like a pond returning to life after a stone has been thrown. I found myself studying the journal where it lay among metal and glass and very proper edges. The brown paper ribbon I'd saved had curled itself into a soft question mark. 10 pages my hand. My heart glowed, alone inside leather. Dad edged toward me, his mouth tight. "She read it," he murmured, which was his way of saying, "I'm sorry." "Sure," I said, though it was suddenly hard to get my lungs to agree to the task. "Later, in private, when she has time." "Clara," he said softly. He reached for my wrist, then thought better of it. He had never been a man who liked to make a scene, even to make comfort. "You did good." 2 women behind? Us were whispering. and because fate has a sense of humor. The music softened at that exact moment, so their words rose as if they were offering them to me. It's sweet, but at 50, a diary, and it's so inexpensive. And she's always been the quiet one, hasn't she? Quiet, as if quiet were synonymous with less. As if quiet meant you were made of fewer elements, fewer nobler metals. The DJ, sensing a dip, launched into a Beyoncé song, radio edit, and the crowd began to move their bodies. The flower wall took on a glow as couples angled for Instagram photos. Angela whisked the scarf around Victoria's shoulders and took a boomerang of the ends fluttering in slow motion. Ethan taught Aunt Camille a ridiculous dance move, and she gamely tried it, laughing. I took a step backward, then another. The night air tasted like frosting and carbon dioxide, like fruit platters. At the edge of wilting, I turned toward the kitchen, pretending I needed a glass of water, and slipped inside. The echo of the party dulled to a wash, like waves through a wall. In the kitchen, away from the glow, I set both hands on the cool countertop and let a hot, stupid tear touch my knuckle. It made a small, shamed dot, as if it had fallen out of me by mistake. Hey, it was Maria, one of the catering assistants, a young woman with a neat braid and eyes that saw more than people expected, a waitress. To see, she held out a folded dish towel. "For your hands," she said, as if she hadn't noticed my face, which was kind of her. "Those drinks are sweaty." "Thanks," I said, accepting the towel and pressing it to my fingers. "You're doing a great job." "Everything looks incredible." She smiled. "It's your mom's night, huh?" "My mom's whole." "Life is my mom's night," I said, then winced at myself. "Sorry." She shrugged. "Families," she said, as if that one word contained every naughty truth. "I like your ribbon, by the way," she added, "on your gift. It's pretty, not quaint, not earnest, pretty." I felt something uncoil a millimeter inside me. "Thanks," I said again, and this time the word had weight. When I returned to the party, the dance floor was in full bloom. The journal still sat on the table, a small island. My feet carried me to it with the same muscle memory that brings your hand to a bruise. I rested my fingers lightly on the leather. It felt warm, as if it had been lazing in a patch of afternoon sun. "Clara." The voice came like a bell with an edge. Victoria was approaching, Angela beside her, two friends trailing like obedient. "Birds, there you are, darling. We're just saying." She touched the journal with the backs of her fingers as if petting a timid cat. "What a heartfelt gift you've given me." "Thanks, Mom," I said, steady. I wanted to push the book gently into her hands and say, "Take it. Read it. It's not a prop. It's the point." We were trying to remember, one of her friends inserted, "Where you work, the indie bookstore." "In that quaint part of town on Elm Street?" I said. "Paper Lantern." "Oh, how darling," the other friend said, the word darling turning brittle in her mouth like spun sugar. "Wonder you appreciate things like this?" She nodded at the journal. "There is a vintage charm to it." My stomach tightened. "It's not vintage," I said, then immediately hated the defensiveness in my voice. "But it will be." That's kind of the point, right? To become something you keep. Something that holds your life. Victoria's smile trembled. Then, reset. A fissure repaired. Of course. And I do adore that you wrote your thoughts. You know me, I'm not terribly introspective." She laughed to telegraph that this was a joke about herself, safe to join. "But perhaps I should be at 50. 50 is the new 30, Angela chimed, bumping her shoulder gently. "Please," Victoria said, mock exasperated. 30 is the old 25. They laughed. I didn't. My hand was still on the journal like a lifeline. "You'll read it?" I asked, hating how young I sounded. "All of it." Victoria tilted her head. "Darling, I have 3 after-parties this week and a charity luncheon on Tuesday. But I'll skim. I always skim." She squeezed. My forearm, nails cool against my skin. This means so much that you contributed. Contributed, as in to a potluck. As in, thanks for bringing napkins. Something in me wobbled on its axis. For a second, the electricity of anger made the lights brighter, the music louder, the smell of peonies almost suffocating. I imagined saying no, shouting, "Do you hear yourself? Do you hear how your word earnest scrapes? Do you know how hard it is to show you the soft part of me?" But I didn't. I heard my own voice say, "You're welcome," like a person in a dream having the wrong conversation. They moved away, drawn by the flash of a camera and the promise of another compliment. I stood, breathing, while the DJ changed tracks and the crowd whooped. "Clara." Dad's voice again, low, steady. He came to stand beside me, shoulders a little slumped, like his jacket was suddenly heavier. "Walk with me for a minute." We drifted to the edge of the lawn where the light fell away into the dark of the old maple and the neighbor's fence. From here, the party looked like a snow globe, perfect, contained, shook up. "She shouldn't have done that," he said finally. "What, open gifts?" I tried humor, the way a person tries a locked door. He shook his head. "Make you small. She does it without thinking sometimes. That doesn't make it hurt less." He looked at me, and in his eyes I saw it. The helplessness good men feel. When glamour and cruelty wear the same perfume, for what it's worth, that book is the only gift that'll still matter in 10 years. "Thanks," I said. And this time the word was not a deflection, but a tether. We stood in the shadow for a few more breaths, listening to Victoria's laugh rise above the music like a gull. Then Dad angled his body so he could see me fully. "There's something I should maybe tell you," he said. The words careful, fragile, as if they were crossing a narrow bridge. "About your mother, about value." Before he could continue, the DJ's microphone squealed and Victoria's voice rang out. "Everyone, photo time, family first." The command cracked through the crowd like a whip. People turned instinctually. In our house, when Victoria called for family first, it meant now. Dad exhaled. Later, he said, "We'll talk later." We rejoined the brightness. Angela was already arranging us like chess pieces. Parents in the center, golden. Child on the right, baby. Boy on the left, middle child me where the composition needed balance. I took my place and told my face to look like love. The camera flash mocked me with its false lightning. As everyone dispersed, a hush came over a cluster near the gift table, the kind of hush that is both accidental and deliberate. I turned in time to see Aunt Camille, who loved drama too much to be careful, pick up the journal and flip it open without asking. "Oh," she said, loud enough. "She wrote all this. My Clara." My Clara, I braced. "Camille," Victoria said, smile fixed, "that's private." Camille squinted theatrically at the page. I could see the words from here because I knew them by heart. I remember when I got stage fright and you mouthing the words with me from the front row until my lungs found air. Camille read aloud. "Until my lungs found air." "Oh my God, that's actually lovely." She looked up, surprised. Then, because she couldn't help herself, added, "Clara always was the poetic one. Poor thing." Poor thing. And there. It was the laugh, quiet and shared, like fine china clinking in the dark. I felt my skin go cold. The vindicating imagined moment, the softened mouth, the nod crumbled like a sugar sculpture left in the rain. In its place, a hard, bright anger took shape, clean as a blade. It slid into me not to wound, but to separate, to carve away what I no longer needed to carry. I crossed the grass and picked up the journal, careful but quick. "This," I said, to the nearest corner of the crowd, to Margaret and the Hernanzes and Aunt Camille and my mother with her moonlight dress. "Belongs to me as much as it belongs to her." I hugged it to my chest, heartbeat against leather. It's not a party trick. The silence that followed had edges. People shifted. Someone coughed. Victoria's smile cracked. Finally, a hairline you could miss if you weren't looking. For it, Clara, she said, voice dipped in warning and something else worry. We're celebrating. Don't be dramatic. I'm not being dramatic, I said, and my voice didn't shake. Being clear. Dad put a hand on my shoulder, light, proud. Angela stepped between us with the haste of a diplomatic attach diffusing a small war. Okay, she said brightly. Group photo with the cake. Everyone loves cake. Mom, the sparkler candles are ready. She looked at me, eyes pleading. Not here. Not now. I let my breath out slowly through my nose. Didn't want to. Be the villain in my mother's play. Not yet. Not without all the pages turned. Cake, I said, and stepped back. As the sparklers hissed and the crowd sang a jubilant, slightly off-key happy birthday, I held the journal like a promise. The humiliation still hummed in the air, a low electric throb. But beneath it, quieter and stronger, something else began to vibrate. The first note of a revelation I didn't yet understand, a thin, shining thread pulling taut somewhere beyond the edge of the party lights. When the song ended and the cheering died and the first slice of cake fell onto the first gold-rimmed plate, Victoria turned, gaze skimming, and found me. For a heartbeat, our eyes met. Something flickered their annoyance, yes, but also a flash of fear. It was gone so quickly I might have imagined it. I pressed the journal to my ribs and decided I hadn't imagined anything. Not anymore. The cake had been cut, the sparklers burned down to ash, and the music thumped louder than ever. Guests drifted into clumps, balancing plates and gossip, wine glasses tipping dangerously in animated hands. The party was a living organism breathing, laughing, pulsing, and yet, in the middle of all that noise, I felt the silence of something about to snap. The journal weighed against my chest like a secret. I had kept it close since rescuing it from Aunt Camille's nosy fingers, as if it were suddenly fragile, suddenly endangered. My mother pretended not to notice, but I could feel her glances quick, sharp. The way you glance at a misplaced bill you hope no one else will see. Dad, on the other hand, noticed too much. He stuck close to me after the cake, his hand hovering like a shield at my back. At one point he leaned down and murmured, "Stay near me, Clara. Tonight's complicated." Complicated how? I asked, but he only shook his head, eyes darting to my mother, who was laughing too loudly at something Ethan said. I let it go, but the word lingered. Complicated. Later, when the night had thinned to the after crowd, the ones who lingered, longer, drank heavier, and liked to think they were insiders, I found myself in the kitchen again, refilling water. That's when I overheard it. Two of my mother's friends, Dolores and Margaret, stood near the pantry, their voices carrying. Despite their attempts to whisper, "Did you hear about the appraisal?" Margaret said, her words slow with wine. Dolores nodded eagerly. "Ma'am, that brooch of hers. The one she wears to the galas. Turns out it wasn't nearly what she thought. Nearly worthless. Costume." Apparently, Margaret let out a scandalized gasp laugh. "You're kidding?" "Not at all. She had it valued last month." I heard it from the appraiser's assistant. Can you imagine? Victoria parading around in rhinestones thinking they were heirloom diamonds. They both cackled, and I felt my stomach twist. Not because of the brooch itself, I couldn't care less about a piece of jewelry, but because it explained something. The way my mother had glanced at my journal, the way her smile faltered, the fear I'd caught in her eyes for a fleeting second. It wasn't about the leather or the ribbon or even my memories. It was about value. My mother had always measured worth in glittering surfaces and market price tags. But now her own prized possession had been revealed as worthless. And here I was, offering her something real. Something priceless in a way money couldn't touch. The irony was almost too sharp to swallow. When I stepped back outside, the air was cooler. But my cheeks burned with something hotter than embarrassment rich as anger, mixed with a dawning understanding. I spotted Dad near the patio, talking to Uncle Ray. When he caught my eye, he excused himself and walked straight to me. "We need to talk," he said, his voice low but firm. "What's going on?" asked, clutching the journal tighter. He took a breath, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. "Your mother, she's built a world out of appearances. Do you know that? It's cracking. The jewelry, the club membership debts there are things she hasn't told you kids. She's been trying to cover it all, to keep the mask on." The puzzle pieces started clicking into place in my head, and the brooch. Dad blinked. "Startled, you heard. From her friends," I said, sighed heavily. That was just the start. There are other pieces, bracelets, earrings. She thought they were investments. Turns out they're cheap imitations. She trusted the wrong people, spent money we didn't have, and now she's desperate to keep it quiet. My pulse quickened. So when I gave her this, I lifted the journal. She saw something she couldn't measure in dollars. And it scared her. He nodded slowly. "Exactly. Because if it's not about money, then what is it about?" That's the question she doesn't want to face. I stood there, the bass from the speakers vibrating in my chest, and realized I held the one thing that could strip my mother bare, not with shame, but with truth. The journal wasn't just paper and ink. It was proof that love, memory, and authenticity mattered more than silk scarves and diamond bracelets. And at that very moment, it terrified her, because it revealed the hollowness of the empire she had built. As if summoned by my thoughts, Victoria appeared. Her silver gown shimmered in the patio lights, but her eyes, those sharp, assessing eyes, were fixed on me. "Clara," she said smoothly, "a word." I followed her toward the quieter edge of the yard beneath the maple tree. For a moment, with the shadows falling across her face, she didn't look like my mother. She looked like a woman fighting to keep her kingdom from collapse. "You embarrass me," she said, her voice clipped. That display with the journal, snatching it from Camille, making a scene completely unnecessary. My throat tightened, but I forced my words out. I didn't make a scene. I defended myself and my gift. She scoffed. "Your gift was fine, but it isn't what tonight was about. People expect certain things. Appearances matter." "There it is," I whispered, half to myself. "Appearances." Her eyes narrowed. "Don't start." "No, Mom," I said, louder now. "You've spent your whole life pretending value comes from brands and jewelry and things. But what happens when those things aren't worth what you thought?" Her face paled, just a fraction. But I saw it. "Where did you hear that?" she demanded. "Does it matter?" I asked softly. "Maybe it's time you realize not everything that shines is real." For the first time that night, she didn't have an answer. She turned away, clutching her arms as though holding herself together. In that instant, I understood. My gift had been a mirror. She mocked it because she saw herself in it, not the carefully polished, diamond-encrusted version of herself, but the raw truth beneath. And she hated it. But the night wasn't over. Not yet. Because if she thought she could bury my journal under piles of silk and diamonds, she was wrong. The truth had already begun to seep out, through whispers, through glances, through the cracks in her perfect mask, and I was done being silent. The real reckoning was coming. The party was still roaring, but under the glitz and chatter, a tension rippled like a hidden fault line. My mother had returned to her guests, silver gown flowing like liquid moonlight, smile perfectly reassembled. But I had seen it, the crack, the fear. And once you see something like that, you can't unsee it. I clutched the journal close, my pulse keeping time with the music. All night I had been shrinking, folding myself smaller under her shadow. But not anymore. Tonight I had something stronger than all the silk and jewelry in the room, the truth. It happened when the DJ lowered the music and announced the next round of toasts. People raised their glasses, gathering near the head table again. Victoria glowed in the spotlight, laughing, batting compliments back like a practiced tennis pro. Angela stood to toast again. Naturally, ever the showpiece. "Here's to our dazzling mother," she began. "The woman who taught me everything about style, grace, and how to make an entrance." Laughter, applause. Then Ethan, fumbling but charming, said, "Here's to Mom, who taught me you can boss people around and still get them to love you for it." More laughter. Even Victoria pretended to scold him. The microphone hovered in the air like an invitation. And before I knew it, I was on my feet. "Clara," my mother said quickly, her voice tight. No need, but I had already taken the mic. "I have something to say," I told the crowd, my voice steadier than I expected, "about my mom." The garden lights shimmered over expectant faces. My heart hammered, but my words poured out anyway. I grew up being told that appearances mattered more than anything. That what people see is who you are. For a long time, I believed it. I thought if I wasn't shiny enough, expensive enough, perfect enough, I didn't count. Murmurs rippled through the guests. I saw Angela's hand fly to her mouth, Ethan's eyes widen, Dad watching with a mixture of fear and pride. But the truth is, I continued, value doesn't come from price tags. It comes from meaning. From the moments that shape us, the memories we carry, the love we show Evan when it's not polished or perfect. I lifted the journal high so everyone could see. This was my gift to my mother. 10 pages of memories. 10 pages of proof that she is more than her jewelry, more than her gowns, more than the image she projects. She is my mom. And those memories, our real history together, are worth more than any diamond bracelet. I heard a sharp intake of breath, my mother's. "And I want everyone here to know," I said, locking eyes with her, "that no matter how much she laughs it off or pretends not to care, this is the most valuable gift she's gotten tonight. Not because it's from me, but because it's real. It's for a heartbeat, silence." Then, from somewhere in the crowd, Aunt Camille's voice rang out, tipsy and loud. "Well, it's more valuable than that brooch of hers turned out to be." The crowd gasped, laughter erupting unevenly. Heads whipped toward my mother. A wave of whispers broke like glass shattering. Brooch, worthless costume jewelry. My mother's face went pale, her mask slipping as the murmur swelled. Unable to help herself, chimed in. I heard the appraisal too. Now the whispers became open conversation. Guests leaned in, trading scraps of gossip like currency. Victoria stood frozen, her hands gripping the edge of the table. For the first time in my life, she looked small. I didn't plan what I said. Next tit simply rose out of me, unstoppable. I said, holding up the journal again. Things fade, appearances crumble. But love, memories, truth, that's the only kind of wealth that lasts. The words landed. I saw it in the faces around me, some nodding, some surprised, some uncomfortable. But they heard me. They understood. My mother finally found her voice. "How dare you?" she hissed into the mic, her composure cracking. "You humiliate me in front of my friends, your family." "I didn't humiliate you," I said, cutting across her. "You did that to yourself. It's by mocking me. By mocking the only thing that mattered tonight." The air snapped with tension. She stared at me, chest heaving, and for a moment I thought she might scream. Instead, she turned on her heel and stormed off into the house, leaving the crowd buzzing in stunned silence. Angela looked stricken. Ethan muttered, "Holy crap." Dad stepped forward, placing his hand on my shoulder again, this time firm, protective, proud. "She's needed to hear that for a long time," he said quietly, but loud enough for others to catch. Clara just had the courage to say it. And suddenly the applause began. Tentative at first, then swelling. Guests clapping, some even cheering. A few women dabbed their eyes. Even the DJ, bless him, clapped once before realizing he was supposed to control the music. My cheeks burned. But this time it wasn't shame. was something else vindication. The rest of the evening blurred. Some guests left early, whispering about the drama. Others stayed, eager to see if Victoria would reappear. She didn't. Angela tried to smooth things over, fluttering about, but her eyes kept darting to me with something unreadables. Keza. Admiration? Maybe both. Ethan avoided me entirely, but Dad stayed close, steady as ever. At one point, he leaned down and said, "I'm proud of you, kiddo. You reminded them and her that what matters isn't what glitters, it's what sticks." And for the first time in years, I believed him. Later, as the crowd dwindled and the music softened, I slipped into the quiet of the living room. The journal was still in my hands. I placed it on the mantel where my mother couldn't avoid it. Not hidden, not buried. Front and center. If she ever chose to open it again, she'd find more than memories. She'd find the truth she had spent her whole life running from. But whether she opened it or not didn't matter anymore, because I had spoken. I had stood up. And I had shattered the illusion she held over me. And in that moment, under the glow of the last string lights outside, I realized I wasn't the quiet one anymore. When the last guest left and the music finally died, the silence in our house felt heavier than all the laughter that had filled it. I stood in the living room alone for a moment, staring at the journal on the mantel. It looked out of place among the porcelain figurines and polished silver frames, a humble brown package in a room curated for display. But it belonged there. For the first time, something of mine truly belonged. Upstairs, I heard doors slam, muffled voices. Angela scurrying after Mom, probably trying to soothe her, whispering damage control strategies. Ethan retreated to his room, avoiding conflict like he always did. Dad lingered downstairs with me, his hands shoved into his pockets, the faint smell of aftershave and bourbon clinging to him. "You should get some sleep," he said softly. "I'm not tired," I replied. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded toward the journal. "What you did tonight? You changed something. She may not admit it, but you did." "I humiliated her," I said, my voice flat. "No," he corrected gently. "You held up a mirror, what she saw that's on her." His words settled into me like seeds in soil, quiet but alive. For 2 days, Mom didn't speak to me. She floated around the house like a wounded queen, still wearing her crown but brittle. She called Angela constantly, as if needing reassurance from her golden child. She even joked with Ethan, though I could see the sharpness in her eyes when she glanced my way. I carried the journal upstairs to my room, unsure if I should protect it or let it stay where I had left it. Part of me wanted her to pick it up, to finally read it with her heart instead of her pride. But another part knew that whether she read it or not no longer defined me. On the third night, I found her in the kitchen, sitting at the counter with a glass of wine. Her makeup was off, her face bare. She looked older, smaller, stripped of the gloss she usually wore like armor. "Clara," she said quietly. "Not Mom. Not darling, just my name." I froze. "Yes." She looked down at her hands, then back at me. "That journal. You meant every word, didn't you?" "Yes," I said. "Every word." She let out a shaky laugh. "I don't know if I can. Read it all." "Then don't," I said, surprising myself. "It wasn't about you reading it. It was about me saying it." Her eyes glistened. For a second, I thought she might apologize, might finally acknowledge the years of dismissing me. But she didn't. Instead, she nodded once, stood, and left the room. It wasn't the reconciliation I had dreamed of. But it was something. A crack in the wall. Maybe. Over the weeks that followed, subtle changes took root. Angela, usually smug, in her mother's shadow, seemed unsettled. She asked me questions she never had before, about my classes, my job at the bookstore, even about the journal. One afternoon, she admitted, "I could never have done what you did. I'd be too afraid to make Mom angry, For the first time, I saw her not as my rival, but as another daughter who'd been shaped by the same impossible expectations. Ethan stayed neutral, of course, but he teased me less. He even asked once, "Can you help me pick out a gift for Dad's birthday? Something meaningful." That word made me smile. And Dad, he looked at me differently now. Not as his quiet middle child, but as someone who had carried the truth into the light. One morning, weeks after the party, I came downstairs and saw the journal back on the mantel. Only this time, it wasn't unopened. The clasp was undone, the ribbon folded carefully beneath it. I opened it slowly, expecting to find my words exactly as I had left them, but halfway through, I found new ink. My mother's handwriting. Her script was elegant but shaky. I don't know if I deserve this, but I'm writing anyway. Because maybe she's right. Maybe this is the only wealth that lasts. I closed the journal with trembling fingers. Shadden said the words. Out loud, but in her own way she had spoken. Looking back, I realized the humiliation I felt that night was necessary. It burned me raw, but it stripped away everything false, every lie I had believed about myself. For years, I thought I wasn't enough, not glamorous enough, not valuable enough, not worthy enough. But that night, I discovered the truth. My worth had never been hers to measure. I had always been enough. And though my mother might never fully change, I had changed. I had broken free of the chains of her approval. Now, when I think of that night, I don't think of the mocking laughter or the whispers about my cheap gift. I think of the way the crowd listened when I spoke. I think of the applause that followed. I think of the journal still sitting on the mantel, pages filling slowly, not with perfection, but with truth. My mother mocked my gift until she learned its value, and maybe she's still learning. But me, I already know. The real treasures in life aren't silk scarves or diamond bracelets. They're the memories we carry, the love we dare to show, the courage to speak even when our voices shake. And that's a gift no one can take away. And that's how I learned the true value of love, truth, and standing up for myself. But now I want to hear from you. Have you ever given someone a gift from the heart only to have it mocked or dismissed? What happened and how did it turn out? Share your story in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story and want more heartfelt dramas of family, betrayal, and justice, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and tap the notification bell so you never miss the next one. And if you want to keep the emotions flowing, go watch the story that's popping up on your screen right now. I promise you won't regret it.